know, does anyone here have any idea how many people died in the 20th century, this last century, in war? Anyone have any idea?
120 million.
Over 100 million people. And most of them, not soldiers, innocent civilians, non-combatants. People like you in the audience. People like all of us. When does it stop? When is enough enough? When do we just say, look, you know, I mean, Peter, Paul, and Mary raised that question years ago in their song, Blowing in the Wind. They said, how many years will it take till we know that too many people have died? See, we have the ability to change things. And that's what this Department of Peace is all about. It's catching our ability, the impulse that we have for transformation, to change, to become more than we are and better than we are, to create a whole new society. So our children and their children will never have to worry about having loved ones go off to die in war or having the war come to them. Let's pray.
This is showing our budget compared to the military budget compared to all the other discretionary things. There is no other word for it. Here's some statistics that Chalmers Johnson cites. You ready? 725 sprawling U.S. military bases outside the United States today.
725.
725, yes. You know where? In 140 countries.
Please.
You know how many countries there are in the world? In the UN?
190.
190, yes. In 140 of 190 countries around the world, there's a U.S. military base. You want to know why people hate America so much? Because all they see, you know, is the mighty U.S. military hammer marching all over the place. Oh, and here's another number, Marjorie. 236 U.S. military golf courses. Your tax dollar at work.
Dennis's idea, which he really invented, although there are some precedents in it, right around the framing of the Constitution itself 200 years ago, is to create a Department of Peace to stand alongside the Department of Defense and to really articulate nonviolent solutions to international problems in every conceivable circumstance. To not just look around the world with the framework of, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. We've got a $400 billion military hammer, so what do you think, what are the solutions that George Bush seems to come up with to things? They're usually military solutions. Dennis has this idea for a Department of Peace, and I think it's not at all impossible in the short term that nominee John Kerry might well adopt that idea, especially, I'm going to speak very pragmatically here, since he needs to reestablish his bona fides with those of us in the peace community after that war vote. He made the wrong choice, in my view and in Dennis's view, on the war vote in October of 2002, and I think it's quite possible that he might want to reach out to the peace community by adopting Dennis's idea of a Department of Peace.
Now, in the history of this country and in the history of the world, we have leaders who believe that war is inevitable. Think of the implications about this belief. All of us live our lives believing in certain things, and what we believe has a real impact on the life that we live. It's just inevitable. You think of what you believe the most in life, and think of how it guides your life. Now, what happens, for example, if any of us believe that war is inevitable? What's likely to happen? Right, and that's exactly what's been happening in this country and in countries around the world as leaders, in their limited thinking, believe in the inevitability of war. They create a self-fulfilling prophecy of war. They just lock themselves in. Now, if you add to that greed, like an interest in oil, and you have a pre-existing belief in the inevitability of conflict, and you feed into that the desire to grab someone else's resources, well then, you can pull with you all those people who maybe aren't in on the game, who also believe that war is inevitable, and who don't see any other way to solve problems other than killing people. So what we have here is a world which is being racked by violence every day, where people don't see any other way to settle their differences other than killing each other. And for all the carnage that takes place, for all the bodies that are lying all over, things don't change. I mean, for some reason, no matter how many people you kill, things still don't change. And so, it isn't about killing people. It's about looking at the ideas that cause us to be locked into conflict. And so the question that was posed relates to an idea to create a cabinet-level position in our government called a Department of Peace, which would work to uphold principles of nonviolence. Talk about this a minute. Think about our government for a moment and the way it's set up, the services it provides. We have Social Security. That helps to inform the work of the government with respect to providing retirement security for tens of millions of Americans. Medicare. It's accepted that there is a responsibility in our society for the elderly in particular, for their health care. And we have the whole society is organized. Education. It's understood that one of the functions of society is education. And while it's not funded well, we at least have a common agreement that education ought to be a function of society. Now in this society, defense, put that in quotes, or military aggression, or Pentagon, whatever you want to call it. It's accepted that the country has to defend itself, and so a certain amount of money, most of the money in this country, is spent for the Pentagon. We all agree the government has certain functions, and those functions take place in a structure around which the government is organized. And one department after another, whether it's defense, health, education, environment, all of these functions. But you know what? We don't have any enduring structure in our society to make the everyday work of America peace. So the idea of the Department of Peace is to create just such a structure, a cabinet-level position where we will work to make nonviolence an organizing principle in our society. Now, how does that work? It works by creating a department which will have as its function to work through education and work through non-governmental organizations and community groups, the kind of groups that many of you work with, to look at the issues in our society that we have to deal with every day. I want you to think about these issues for a moment.
Are going to ban all space-based weapons, and this will prohibit the use of weapons against objects in space that are in orbit. Well, satellites are something that we need to be able to see the Earth so that we can see where the sick waters are and clean them up, so that we can see where the migrated people have gone who are suffering and send the troops in, new job for the troops, with food and water and medicine. And don't forget, most of the people in the military are in service. They're here to provide protection of the people and preservation of the environment. They also have that language in all their military doctrines. Right. As a military strategist, I really studied what the military industrial complex is about, and it's good things mostly. It's the handful that are still left that are going for the old paradigm, the old vision. But I believe that there are enough of us, and when we get tapped with this new information, that we can prevent the weaponization of space and talk about timing, that we're going to do this over the short and long term, this work that we're doing. We also can take certain steps that can actually take place. The plan that we've been working on is to get the ban on space-based weapons, listen carefully, in early 2005. Because we don't have much of a choice. The accelerated momentum of the industry in which I have stepped out of has gone beyond my wildest imagination. The ABM Treaty, the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, when I was at a meeting in 1977, the plan was being discussed to break the ABM Treaty, which was only between two countries and only about stopping anti-satellite weapons.